Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Harmony House this Thursday evening. I know many of you are regular attendees here, and some of you may be new. We would love to invite you to join our email list if you are new and be in touch with Harmony House by phone or through a friend who may have introduced you to us this evening. So before we begin tonight's program, I would like to, just in case any of you need to leave early, I want to remind you all that we have a very special holiday program next Thursday evening, and we are having it live. We are very excited about this. We are going to be in person at Harmony House, and I know that many of you may be extended family who don't live locally, but I can tell you that we will also be on Zoom. But if you live locally, it's a grand invitation. Bring your mask if that makes you comfortable. We certainly encourage that, but we will have a very, very lovely program and people maybe that you haven't seen in person in a very long time. Myself, Michelle, Anthony, Tony, whom you're going to hear from tonight, and a lot of the people that have been regular guests here will be there. And we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to have music. We're going to have a skit. We're going to have all kinds of holiday stuff. And no matter what religion or nationality you may be, you are welcome to come, and we all blend together with the beautiful spirituality of all religions, which is our focus always in this evening's programs. So I just want to remind you that the program will be the same address and it will be the same Zoom and the same time, 6:30 to 8 next Thursday evening. Now we have for our, and the topic is going to be Sing Songs of Joy, Celebrate Life. I don't know how much actual singing the audience will be doing. We'll see what happens with that. But it's interesting that the topic for next week kind of segues into this evening's topic, because as you know, our topic, our theme for the month is celebrating letting go. Whatever that may mean to you, we are discussing it in 5 different ways, 5 different weeks, this wonderful holiday month. And tonight's topic is being sensible in that letting go process. So I'm reading the blurb from next week's program, and it says to celebrate life is to appreciate all the wonders of life and to remain happy and light. Light means no worry, no burden. And it goes on, but I'm here to say that I think one of the most important things that we come to think about this holiday season, especially with the new year coming in a few weeks, is whatever there is about us that we're burdened by, and what sensibilities we can use to perhaps relieve our burdens, the burdens we put on other people, the burdens they put on us. Do we have to buy into it? If someone asks you to dance, do you have to say yes and dance to their music? Or can you have music playing in your own head and find a way to maintain your stability when the world isn't? So we have with us tonight someone you may have already seen here many times. We try to invite him back at least once a month or so. Brother Tony, Antonio Figueroa, who is a wonderfully intelligent, beautiful brother, whom I've had the privilege of knowing very well. Here he is. Hi, Tony. And let me tell them a little bit about you first. Tony is an international architect and planner, and he's currently principal of the US firm LHP Architects that has also done work in India, in China, in Europe. He has served as deputy commissioner to a major New York City mayoral agency, and at one time was principal in a firm he founded in the South Bronx as part of NYC, New York City, where he hails from. He has been a student of Raja Yoga meditation for about 20 years, and his involvement with the BKs includes facilitating retreats for his professional community and participating in programs to further the understanding of spirituality, particularly in the context of professional life. No matter what profession you are, We all have a private part of our of our spirituality. And then we have to, this is the way the Brahmins do it. We put on a suit, put on your clothes to go to work, and mix. We have family, we have jobs, we have obligations. So how to transfer that spirituality into everyday living is something that Tony manages to bring to his profession and to all of us. So without further ado, Tony, I'd like to turn the evening over to you and see what you have to say about being sensible in letting go. Welcome.
Thank you.
Before I let you start, though, there will be an opportunity. You can put questions for Tony or comments in the chat, and we may be able to call on you later on. I'm not sure if we can do that this evening, but for now, any questions you have, Tony would be happy to address as he speaks. Okay, and that's it. Okay, Tony.
Thank
Hi.
you. Thank you. It's great being back here. It's always kind of a real treat to be back, in this forum. And today, one of the issues that for me is very important, I'm hoping to be able to elaborate on the issues of what does it mean, or what do you do when you want to be sensible. But it's the context of the season that we're really kind of putting this idea forward on, and essentially letting go is what we're looking at this season. This is a season for renewal. The new year is coming. We're doing resolutions of things that we want to do different, which means that we're letting go of things that we don't feel we want to continue doing. So letting go is something we want to do. It's one of the nature of the season. It's a season of renewal. That process of letting go and the reason that I think that the whole notion of New Year's resolutions are so problematic and so difficult to maintain is because we really don't separate what they are and what we want and what those resolutions relate to. Maybe kind of more specific. When we want to let go, we want to start anew, we have to detach ourselves from the burdens and responsibilities that occupy our thoughts. That's what, at least for me, letting go means. And I'm very specifically saying that because it's thoughts that we have the ability to kind of manage, not responsibilities. And I think when people put these together, it becomes almost an insurmountable task, because responsibility belong to the world, belong to your life. That's how we live. We live based on responsibilities, responsibilities as a child, responsibilities as an adult, as a father, as a mother, as a husband, wife, son. I mean, all of these things are things that just do not go away. So we want to let go. We can't let go of responsibilities. That's not the way things work, although some people try to do that. But that's not really the issue of letting go. The letting go, we have to say, let go to the thoughts, because that's the one thing that we own exclusively. Nobody owns our thoughts except for us. So the one thing you have complete control over is the thoughts. You don't have complete control of responsibilities. That's just not possible. So I think it's important when you're talking about letting go and about this season of renewal and trying to kind of lift yourself up to some hopefully a new perspective and let go of things that either make you feel bad or make other people feel bad. You have to focus on what it is that you can do without any kind of burden, and that's your thoughts, your own feelings. These are yours. These are things that you can own. Most of us have problems with that too, but it's at least something that's doable. We just can't let go of responsibilities. That's not really feasible, and particularly in the complex world we live in. So when you're trying to let go, keeping in mind that responsibilities are not going to go away, you have to be sensible. You have to have some understanding and some sense of how you're going to achieve this, while also being able to be clear-headed about what you still need to address and what is it that you can accomplish. As I was thinking about this particular topic, the word sensible is an extraordinary word. I mean, it has so many meanings, so many connotations. It was difficult to kind of just tease out one that would really focus on this. But I spoke with Louise about this before tonight's event, and I think we came up with something that would really kind of gives us at least one point of focus that I think is very important. So how can we do this letting go in a sensible way? So what do we mean by sensible? Okay, a sensible comes from the word from a Latin word sentire and sensus, sentire and sensus, which all have to do with feelings. It's interesting because the senses are things that we consider to be very, very objective. We see, we hear, we smell, we speak, we taste, we touch. These are things that define the rational universe in which we live. Yet it comes from a word that specifically talks about feelings, not senses, not perception. So it's interesting an etymology for this word. So
that is fascinating, Tony. I did not know that. That's wonderful.
It's I mean, the word sentire is a Latin word that's still used in Spanish and probably in Italian. If I knew enough Italian, I might be able to figure that out. But sentire means to feel, sentir. So you have a word, sensible, that really is based originally on a perception, feeling. So I thought that was very interesting. So as we're talking about being sensible, but essentially we're looking at what does it mean? Words that come to mind. You have rational, you have, which we just talked about, rational universe in which we inhabit, which is defined by the senses. Reasonable, which means that you take actions that are reasonable, that are measured, that have to do with doing something in the appropriate manner, with the appropriate level of intensity and effort. Other things have to do with being practical. In other words, do something that is appropriate to the task at hand. It's not too far, that's not too less, So
Tony, I just want to, can I interrupt you a second?
Sure,
I
you
just
can
want to make
interrupt me.
sure I understand you, and I know I'm the only one that's going to speak right now. So I just got this incredible sense of what you were saying, but I don't know if it's sensible. So the word itself is based on the senses. So
no, it's based on feelings. The word
feelings,
not the
right.
Senses. It's actually the reverse.
So here's the deal. We have 5 senses. So let's say, stay with me now. Let's say I smell, there's a sense, I smell something burning. If I'm sensible, I'm going to take that sense and I'm going to perhaps have the feeling of fear, but I'm going to translate the whole thing into a sensible reaction, which would mean to get the fire extinguisher or to dial the phone and get somebody over if there's a fire. So am I getting the relationship between the origin of the word and what you mean when you're trying to define it in terms of the sensibility coming from the feelings of what is perceived by the senses? Tell me if I'm right.
I think that's a brilliant kind of segue into this, because I wasn't thinking about that at all. I was thinking the opposite, that the word sensible comes from something that's very subjective, which is feelings, and it defines something very objective, which is the senses.
Well, maybe we're meeting in the middle.
But you're basically squaring the circle and saying comes back to saying, okay, how do you do this? You do this by recognizing what it is that you're experiencing. So that's an interesting segue. I wasn't thinking about that, but that I think is actually a kind of squaring of the circle of the whole issue. But to me, the whole notion of this word that comes from a very, very experiential and subjective base is what we talk about, doing something that is objectively viable, objectively appropriate to a particular issue. So what is it to be sensible? So I'm using your example, okay, which I think gives me a good segue, is that to be sensible means that you have the senses and you're aware of what is happening. You're conscious of it. There's a consciousness of what's going on. So sensible to me starts with the whole notion of being aware, being conscious, being clear-headed about what's in front of you. Your examples are appropriate. There's a fire, you're smelling smoke, you taste something bitter, it may be bad for you. You hear a loud noise, it may be sounding danger or sounding some sort of condition that you need to respond to. Same thing with smell, obviously, and obviously from what you see. So being sensible is being aware, and the awareness obviously comes from your senses. The awareness comes from what you see, hear, so on and so forth. But then you have to think about, okay, what is exactly sensible about being aware? And then the next part of this has to do with, okay, what is it you're seeing or hearing? What is your understanding of what's going on? What is the nature of the issue that you're looking at? And that requires an internal kind of thinking process that basically says, okay, this is this condition, this is a situation. So, and then the third for me, I think the most important part of this sensible consciousness, and this is a personal a kind of observation of mine, is accepting. Because accepting is an absolutely critical step for you to be able to take that awareness, that consciousness, and do something constructive with it. It is extremely, extremely important, as far as my perception of things, is that you have to be able to accept. And I think there is a lot of kind of, not confusion, there's a lot of interpretation of this word accept. Often people say, well, I can't accept this person, I can't accept this behavior, I can't accept this, I can't accept something that's already happened. That is a non sequitur, that is a oxymoron. There's no possibility of not accepting something that is. I mean, when something happens, you're in the world, it happened. You're not accepting it doesn't make it less happening, it happens. So for you to be able to be sensible in your actions, you have to have acceptance of what happened, because that is the only way you're going to do anything constructive. And for me, this acceptance is one of the issues that I think we really have a great deal of trouble with, because there's a lot of people and a lot of things that happen, particularly now in this world, that if you look at them objectively in a theoretical sense, if you were going to say, well, is this an appropriate behavior in the way society is structured, you'd say, no, it's inappropriate. It's not a behavior that should be acceptable. So that is a conceptual position. But in reality, when you're being sensible and dealing with the material world, or even dealing with emotional and intellectual issues, you have to deal with the fact that something is. So accepting is not agreeing, which is what we tend to morph this term into, because we want to be very clear. We don't agree with this person's position. We don't agree with that behavior. We don't agree with, well, it's fine. There's a lot of things we don't agree with. That's very different than accepting. Accepting is something that has to do with what is it that happened. So if your perception of something is this person behaved this way, or this situation came and is now presenting itself, it's not a question of agreeing with it. I mean, that's not the way it works. It's a question of whether or not we recognize it for what it is. And for that to happen, you have to accept it. If you don't accept it, then your ability to actually respond and deal with the situation is just not there. This is the most problematic thing in terms of relationships, at least from my perception. We look at relationships and we say, if it's not acceptable, how can we be in the relationship? So obviously something is going on.
A little trouble with the audio, Tony. Your
That's more
voice is
complex
cutting.
than
Yeah, your
agreement.
voice is cutting in and out. We're losing you a little bit.
I'm sorry.
Your voice is cutting in and out a little bit.
My internet it looks like stable, but it's becoming unstable. I've been having this issue all day. Where did I fall off?
You're good right now.
Okay.
I don't know. I couldn't quite make it out.
All right.
It
So
was about a sentence or two.
essentially, accepting something is the only way you get to the next step.
Mhm.
The minute you don't accept something that is, a person, a circumstance, an event, the minute you say to yourself, I don't accept this, you're denying something that's in existence.
Yeah.
And for you to actually deal with that situation, you can't deny it. You have to recognize what it is. So to me, acceptance is a very, very fundamental part of being sensible, part of being able to let go of doing things, because you can let go of something that you still haven't recognized as happening as existing. If you're saying, I don't accept this person, I don't accept this, you're denying that ever happened or existed. In your mind, that basically clouds the issue of the fact that someone did something already, and you have to now respond.
Yeah. Just to clarify for a moment, I'm sure there are people thinking, well, what if someone behaves so inappropriately that it really is unacceptable? They take out a gun and shoot you. They punch you in the face. What if, how does one sensibly deal with something? I'm going to the extreme, but you know what I mean. Something that really
when
violates.
when something does something like that, it's not a question of accepting, it's a question of responding, because you already, the person has made their actions so compelling that you're forced to accept it. You're forced to accept it. Someone's pulling out a gun, someone is hitting you. It's not a question of discussion. It's a question of, there's not a gray area. The more problematic is the stuff that's in a relationship, that's a stuff that's in a professional relationship, a personal relationship, where things are happening that you don't like or you don't feel are appropriate, but you haven't broken up, you haven't changed, you haven't done anything, except you're feeling very resentful that something's happening.
Right. So in either case, I'm accepting that it happened. And then my sensible reaction might be to either leave
or
not
change
fight
it
back, be peaceful, or do something to protect myself. So we're always talking about acceptance was the point I just wanted to make.
Yeah. So the other issue, so this is not, I don't want to kind of trivialize this whole notion of acceptance. It's something that's very hard to do.
Yes.
It's not something simple. So I don't want this exchange to kind of get to the point and saying, okay, well, you know, that's fine and dandy. You just said this nice word, but what does it mean? How do you achieve this? It's not something that you can do all that easily, because as you were saying, some things are so overwhelming that you really have trouble even just digesting them, let alone accepting the fact that that's the reality that you're confronted with. So I think that that's very important, that we recognize acceptance is not an easy thing to do. It's not like learning something or understanding something or observing something. It has to do with how do your internal reaction to this, how does that work? How does that function? So, and does it function in a way that is useful to you, is helpful to you, makes the situation better, not worse, like what happens often. So
especially in relationships, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
so,
you're right.
Yeah. So I have a little trinity that I have for this, which is, I've always thought about this in terms of what can you do affirmatively to deal with this whole issue of acceptance. And as in all things spiritual, which I think is one of the most important tools for dealing with acceptance, dealing with the issues of sensibility and responding in the appropriate way, is that you have to find tools to be able to achieve acceptance without it becoming something undigestible to you. So from that, I'm taking obviously a page from the spiritual disciplines that we promote here at Harmony House, and that is, you have to have love. Love is one of the critical, the three peers. So I'm going to go through all of them. Love, obviously, is one. You have to have love of yourself. You have to have love of the world around you, not just appreciation of yourself or the world around you. You have to have love of the people that are in your life, that mean something to you. You have to have love as a way, as a tool for dealing with the world. And that's one of the things that we really feel is important. And this is a kind of a practical application of that. Because there are three things that I think are critical for us to be able to function and deal with the kind of vicissitudes we're confronted with. So for me, there are three things. One is love, which has to do with your attitude towards the world. Two is understanding, which has to do with your awareness and your ability to figure out, sense what's going on around you. And the last is acceptance. Now, the great thing about this trinity is that you only need two, and the third automatically comes. So if you have understanding and acceptance, you're going to be able to create a feeling of appreciation and love, because that's what comes out. That's the product of that. If you have love and understanding, the acceptance will automatically come, because that's the nature of the dynamic of those two qualities. And if you have love and acceptance, you will understand even the most complicated and impossible situations. So it's a kind of a three-legged stool that you only need two legs for, and the third leg will always automatically materialize. So in order for dealing to acceptance, you can't do it by itself. You can't just go say, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to deal with this fact. You have to have tools. You have to go at it with some basis for saying, how am I going to achieve this? You just can't sit back and say, okay, I'm going to
Okay.
deal with this.
So let me summarize and see if it's clear, and maybe the audience might have some questions also. Okay, so my husband comes home and for no apparent reason starts screaming at me. Doesn't even matter what he says. I, at that moment, have to go to the first leg of the stool, right? I have to find the part of me that loves that man enough to go to the second part, which says, he's had a bad day. This isn't about me at all. And the worst thing to do would be to not accept what he's just said or done. The worst thing I could do would be to fight. So
Because that's not accepting.
That's not accepting. Okay, am I right? We got it?
Yeah.
Okay, there's your Trinity. Okay.
So
Just
that's
wanted
and the great thing about this Trinity is you only need two. The third comes along automatically.
comes naturally.
But that's, to me, that's important, because
It's a goal.
I say acceptance, and like, what does that mean? I mean, if someone is confronted with a situation like you just mentioned, said, how do you do that? You just can't accept someone coming in and insulting you, or someone behaving in a boorish manner, or it's
Right.
you have to have tools for this, and this is the kind of things that I think we're trying to kind of promote here, is to develop the ways that you can engage with yourself, with other people, and in a way that's going to be constructive, that doesn't make things worse.
Yeah. So if I'm new at it, at least I can put a full stop on whatever my default mechanism is. If my instinct and what I learned growing up and blah, 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 decades and decades of fighting back or defending oneself, or he's making me feel little, or any of these voices in my head, any of these little stories that may come up, the first thing I have to do, if I'm new at this, is just put a full stop on all of that and do nothing and listen and just be. And then I can go into understanding, which will automatically lead to, hopefully, acceptance, right?
Well, it doesn't automatically lead to it, but it takes you a lot further along than just reacting. So, but like I said, acceptance is a pretty serious nut. It's not something that comes like, you snap your fingers and everything is fine. That's why I wanted to make sure that I put something together.
Yeah. Well, we lost you. You froze. You froze on that sentence.
Put forth something that basically says this is
right.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So what I was saying is that acceptance is a very difficult tool to develop, and you just can't do it. You can't just snap your fingers and say, here we are.
But you just mentioned something very interesting. It's the difference between reacting and responding.
Yeah.
Because as children, and maybe even in the homes in which we grew up, we learned to react to things. We go out in the outside world. People are reacting very much now. We have fallout from COVID. We have fear that makes people react badly. So,
well, I think reacting is the universal material response to everything, to every sensation. There's a reaction.
Yeah.
For every sensation that we experience, there's a reaction. When light is too bright, we react. When sound is too loud, reacting is a material characteristic of our existence, and we have to look, and it's valuable in the material world. but when we're talking about things that are not exclusively material, that tendency for reaction becomes a problem because we're reacting while not really trying to think through what exactly is going on.
And that requires thought. That requires a response that's thought out rather than a reaction, right?
Yeah, but I think we have to think about the fact that reacting is our default. So
Yes.
we have to actually consciously,
Yes.
sensibly
Right.
not
Beautiful.
react.
Beautiful. Great. Yeah, that's the trick. And it takes a long time maybe, but we can do it in moving in the right direction.
Long time. This long time. I was at an event in I'm not sure what I'm thinking about this, but it comes to mind in Mount Abu, and Janky was there, and she came to the class. We didn't know she was coming, so we were assembled for a meditation session, and she came, and we were very excited that she came.
Tell
and
our
she said,
audience who she is, okay?
"Oh, Daddy
Not everybody.
Janky was the head of our organization and one of our great spiritual leaders, and she came to the class, and we were all excited because she was there, and she asked the question, and there were about 150 of us around there. She asked the question, okay, tell me how many of you have conquered anger? Nobody raised their hand. There are a lot of honest Brahmins there, so nobody raised their hand. And she said, well, I knew there was a reason I had to come here. So, and anger is one of the most absolutely destructive reactions we have. I mean, I use the example of driving on the road and someone cutting me off, and before I can even think, I'm angry. I'm saying, wait a minute, I don't know why I'm angry, but before, so it's anger, reaction is our default. And it's very hard to deal with. So
yeah, it harms ourselves and it harms others.
Yeah.
It's one of the hardest. Okay, so we have you Trinity, the love, the understanding, and the acceptance. And we have a formula for reacting sensibly to situations we cannot change.
Right.
Okay.
Which is most of life.
So at this point, I would just like to invite anyone who has a question or a comment. I don't know if you can unmute. Are we able to have the audience unmute tonight? I don't even know who's in the control room tonight. I know Eric's away. Hi, is that Narayan? Silent partner tonight. Could someone try to unmute and say hello and see if you can? If I don't get a response, I know we can't. All right, or you can write in the chat if you have anything to ask.
Awesome.
No, okay,
No,
thank you,
no.
Jane. I see you nodding your head. I knew I could count on you, Jane. All right, okay, so we can't, but you are welcome to put anything you like in the chat this evening and we can respond to that. Tony can respond to that. Okay, Tony. So we want to celebrate letting go. Would you like to elaborate on how personally you've celebrated letting go? Not to
for
put
me,
you on the spot.
yeah, that's okay. I mean, for me, letting go has always meant being able to invert the formula by which I used to live my life. Originally, I thought tension was a good thing. I used it in my work. I used it to motivate myself. I used it to motivate others. And I thought I was a fantastic manager. I was very cool. It's just I was able to use it as a tool. So tension was a default. Now, there were moments where I was able to relax and be free of tension. But then, whenever I was not consciously trying to relax, tension became the default. I was back into that. And over the years, I've been able to change that equation. My default now is I'm not engaged. I'm not tense. I'm not, my default is not I'm constantly looking for what's the next going to be crisis, next battle, the next issue I have to deal with. I still deal with tension. I mean, I still work in the real world, and that world is full of all kinds of tension. So it's still part of my life. But at least when I'm home, when I have a moment to myself, when I have a coffee at lunchtime, that's not with me. And I think that is one of the most important, for me, one of the most important things of letting go is that I no longer have to worry when I stop. When I stop, I'm not carrying tension with me. When I stop, I'm basically at rest. I'm not still carrying the tension. Before, tension was the default. I was default in terms of when I ate, when I spoke to people, whatever I did, tension was a part of that. And only when I consciously made an effort to stop was I able to kind of say, okay, now I'm relaxing. That fortunately is not the case now.
That takes a lot of power and strength. How did you manage? I don't know if you can articulate this, but even you, but how did you manage to put a full stop on the tension when you left the situation and decide willfully that you're not going to live in it 24/7, the tension?
Well, that's critical to that is letting go.
How?
There is an arrogance that we have as human beings.
What? Can't hear you, Tony.
Intellectual conceits.
All right, say that again.
Can you see me?
We lost you the last sentence, the last complex sentence.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can.
Okay.
Yes.
One of the intellectual conceits that we live by is arrogance. There's an arrogance that's bred from entitlement. That is a real fundamental element in the tension that we create, particularly in terms of your professional life and in terms of some of your personal life. You feel you have an entitlement. You have a right to certain parts of your existence. That you feel that you're entitled to a response. You feel you're entitled to someone relating to you when you speak to them. You feel entitled that all of these things should be part of the process of your social and personal engagement. And as you remove that sense of entitlement, even good things, for example, when you're doing stuff and you really feel tension, you have to get something done, there are some things that are not basically within your power to do, but you still feel responsible to do them. That is an arrogance because they're not doable, but you feel so powerful that you should be doing it, even though logically they're not doable. And that was an issue I had professionally that I had to deal with, because I was doing, at that time I was working on a lot of proposals for projects. One of them was a project that I did in India, that I lived in India for several years. And I was under the delusion that the things that I couldn't do, I should be able to do. It's an arrogance. It's an arrogance. And that arrogance is one of the things that fuels this tension, that we should do this, that other people should do this, that there is an expectation, an entitlement, and it's not more than an expectation, an entitlement, that you are entitled to have that level of impact and authority on the world. And that if you're not having it, it's a failure of something,
Mm.
maybe yourself. So
I never saw tension as coming from arrogance. That's just a beautiful explanation. Makes
it
perfect
comes,
sense.
yeah, and it's can be well intentioned. It's not like arrogance of feeling superior to anybody, which wasn't what I was dealing with. It was arrogance of feeling that I was supposed to do all the things that I thought I could do.
Mhm. Right.
And that's not true. That is one of the first professional items that I began to work on. And that was obviously coming to the BKs, over 20 years ago, that I began to unhook that, untie that knot. It's not a knot that I've untied completely, but it's a lot better than it was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, that's how I lived. I thought that was life.
So when you lead, when you facilitate these discussions on, you bring your Brahmin life into the arena of the professional life, what is it you help people see?
Well,
Or let go of,
well, when you're trying to the retreats that I've been involved with have to do with taking people in my profession, the physical development professions, which is a very objective, kind of activity. It's all to deal with the physical world. It's the environment, it's buildings, it's roads, it's planning, and try to make them see that that is only one aspect of life, and that it is not exclusive, it is not mutually exclusive with transcendent values and transcendent tools, that there is a relationship between them, that it's not just, I have to do this building, I have to do this project, I have to do this road, I have to do this train station, there is a correlation in those efforts with how you view yourself, others, and the world. And that there is a logic within the non-material values that is parallel to the logic that exists in the material world. See, I feel that there is no fundamental separation. The values of transcendent values of spiritual engagement, I think, have parallel, mirrored in the material world, but we have to look for them. If our position is that they don't exist, we're not interested in them, then looking for them is useless, because you're not going to find them, obviously. But obviously, people that come to the retreats are interested in them, so it's a somewhat easier lift. There was another question, I think, in the
is there?
Yeah,
I
there was
just
a
looked.
question.
I didn't. Go ahead. Can you read it?
Yeah, trying to let go using your trilogy tools for sensible behavior. Would you explain how does one deal with continual disappointment when you have basic expectations?
I'm
Okay.
not seeing. What are you looking at? I'm seeing a chat box.
The chat.
Only. I don't have it
Thing.
here. Oh, maybe you. Maybe
Yeah,
I don't have access. Okay. Maybe it's just you. I don't have it. Okay, just go ahead. I'm glad you read it aloud for me too.
I don't know. Anyway, it says, right. Okay. So basically, the question is, how do you deal with continual disappointment when you have basic expectations? Okay. This goes back to my point about how do you deal with losing tension. And basically, expectations is a very, very problematic concept, because expectations can very quickly segue into entitlements. Okay? We have to be able to make the difference between expectations and entitlements. So, expectations is we hope to be able to get the task that we have done We hope to be able to meet someone tomorrow that we're dealing with and be able to engage with them. We hope to be able to make a particular progress in some area of our lives, okay? These are expectations. I'd like to call them, in some ways, they're like faith. You have faith that you're going to graduate from college. You have faith that you're going to get this job. You have faith, okay? That's how we live from one day to the next. When it goes from being faith, being an expectation, to being an entitlement, then you have a very different problem. Then you already think that you own that particular feeling, circumstance, or relationship. And you can't own any of that. They're not ownable. These things are not ownable. They're not property. They're not like a chair or a slot or a house. They're not ownable. So the expectation and entitlement line is very important to draw. You cannot own these kinds of things. When you go to entitlement, means you think you own them. You own a relationship. You own a particular level of advancement. You cannot own that. Owning that it's not real. It's not possible. But you still believe that you can own it. So that's why expectations have to be very clearly defined from entitlements. Entitlements are a very, 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 very negative and destructive thing. Those things can be devastating. The minute we go and segue from expectations to entitlement, we're in deep water, very deep water. I was saying before, I thought I was entitled to do this project the way I wanted to. Not that I was going to try. Expectations, I was entitled. I had to do that. That's not true. I didn't have to do anything. Nothing had to. The project could have gone, down the truck, the sewer. That was possible. But I felt no, I had to make it. And that's a benign example. There are obviously a lot more destructive examples. I think that's one of the things about disappointment. Disappointment comes not just from expectation; it comes from entitlements. Then it's more than disappointment. Then it's I have been betrayed. Things get very bad after that.
Well, just sticking with the basic level of expectations leading to the feeling of entitlement and all. We live in a world, though, it becomes so ingrained in so many personalities that this is the American way. This is the way to be. And I expect you to do this, and you are entitled. It's just a vicious cycle. But I guess, can we bring it home to, we mentioned personal relationships before, take it out of the professional arena. And how does this manifest over the dinner table?
Well, I was thinking about that a little bit earlier, about this whole subject of entitlement. And one of the things I think has to do, there's an issue of, and it's the same dynamic, jealousy, for example. Okay, that's universal quality.
Right.
I can speak to it from man's point of view. I'm sure the women's point of view is a little different because the men and women are very different. I've noticed over the years. I figured that out. I'm real smart in that respect. And what happens in that situation is that from a male point of view, you have a relationship, you engage with someone, and that's something that's very special, right? But you can't own that. You can't own that relationship. It is something that's unownable. It's a transcendent esoteric experience that happens once, or maybe happens several times, but you can never own it. But we men want to own it. So what do? We look at it and saying, well, if we can't own it, then is there anybody else involved in this? And you see it somebody else, and there's another person, another man that looks at this woman. Even though the woman is not even responding to it, you're already upset because
Right.
someone else wants to own what you think you want to own. And the woman may not even say anything, and the man is already enraged. I mean, that's a very direct, and that's because we have this entitlement. We feel we want to own this. Well, I'm entitled to this. Whatever I did entitles me to this. You're not entitled to anything, You're not
So
entitled to that.
So this doesn't come from the spiritual side of us.
No,
This comes
entitlement is
from
not from the spiritual
the
side of it at
ego,
all.
the good
This
old
comes,
ego.
all this comes from the ego, from our feeling that we can own things. This is
Right.
actually a very modern vice, this entitlement. I think it's a very modern vice because it doesn't correspond to anything, doesn't necessarily correspond to something that's traditional, negative behavior. You can rationalize it as something appropriate. I certainly did for a long time, so I'm sure other people can do this.
These are crutches.
It's a very, very modern and subtle vice.
Yeah.
Entitlement. And it's one of the most destructive things that can happen to you if you're not careful.
Absolutely. Well, before I ask you to do a quick minute or two little guided thinking of what we've talked about, meditative moment, I see we have one more chat. Michelle says, even entitlement for someone to hear my opinion. That was Michelle's comment, my alter ego on alternating evenings as MC. It's true, though. We have to be heard, right?
I have a personal understanding of that.
Do share.
I have a personal understanding of that. So I know exactly what you're talking about. We all feel that way. I mean, a lot of us feel that way. But that's at least something we can try to control. So
that's right. That's right. Because that's within us, not just controlling another human being.
Yes.
Okay. I'm looking at the hour. It's actually 7:57, and your enlightening discussion has brought us to the end of almost a whole hour. So may I ask you to do the traditional and guide us out with a little, let's elevate and leave all the dust and leave all the ego and leave all the expectations and just go right into what's really important. It's within us all that you bring to professionals and everyone you encounter. I know you do.
So let's just kind of settle in to ourselves, kind of collapse deep into our consciousness. Collapse, go in, fall in, away from all the surface stimuli, from senses, configuration and experience of the world. Going down deep into yourself until you only sense your center, your essence, the part of you that makes you unique and distinct. We drop down deep into that inner consciousness. Free of all these external influences and stimuli. It is there. All the qualities that we look for. Stillness, gentleness, tenderness, lovingness, acceptance. This is where they reside. This is where we need to go when we come back, to bring them as much as possible back to our senses, and our consciousness of the world we are privileged to inhabit.
Om Shanti. Thank you very much, Brother Tony. Beautiful evening. And so listen, audience, you have a few weeks now to take everything you learned tonight about your default mechanisms, your expectations, and start that New Year's resolutions in your head. How can I stop giving myself and other people sorrow? How can I stop feeling burdened by what's going on in my own sensibilities? And we look forward to partying hardy next week here in person, if you can, otherwise on Zoom. And the following week, we do have a special guest. Well, all our guests are special, but this is Sister Dorothy coming to us from Peace Village, our upstate retreat house and center. So we hope to see you the next few weeks, and then we will usher in the new year. We're not done yet. Okay, good evening, everyone. Om Shanti, and thank you to whoever is taking over for Brother Eric tonight up in the control room. Om Shanti.
Some more stuff in the chat. Okay, we just comments. Okay, fine.
Okay.
All right.
Is there something else?
No, there was no questions. There was no.
Oh, okay.
Just
All
people
right.
being very nice. So.
Okay, good. Very nice. Then you deserve it all. Thank you, Tony.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Night.
Om Shanti.